Welcome back once again. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, and Inside Sports. Well, it's been a great 2 weeks about that. About when it concerns the NBA, we're right in the middle of, I should say the heat of the summer here because in Vegas it's the NBA Summer League, but also as well we're winding down with NBA free agency. Most of the players that are out there, whether they're unrestricted or restricted, have been signed up. They've been committed to teams either short or long term. A lot of decisions have been made. A lot of teams have been affected by it. And I know the league, in a certain couple of, I guess, decisions that were made, are up in arms over. And here to break it down with me is my good friend. He is the man in the know when it comes to the NBA. It is Anthony Barbarin. Anthony, as always, it's great to have you on the program.
It's great to be here, man. I always enjoy it.
Well, I can tell you right now, 2018 for you as a Clippers fan is looking pretty good, but 2019 will probably be looking even better because not only did the Lakers make some moves for me as my favorite team, but the Clippers did as well. But we'll touch on more of that here in a bit because I know come 2019, you guys, your team is going to be full of empty pockets, ready to go ahead and spend big time, full of a lot of money. They'll have a lot of money to actually spend on free agents, but and probably actually at this point, in time, one of the actually you'll have about 70 million in cap space as far as so things are looking up for your team, my team as well. They got a great acquisition, but it all starts with what you think is the biggest acquisition, I'm sure, as well as I do, and that is, well, it's not Zaza Pachulia to the Detroit Pistons, but it is LeBron James. He did make his decision, and that word always comes with an asterisk, but he did make his decision. Your thoughts on him moving to the Los Angeles Lakers? It is a commitment, probably more of personal lifestyle, a family choice, and maybe as far as business related as well. But how does this impact the Western Conference, the NBA, and of course the Los Angeles Lakers as well?
To be honest, I mean, that's the best acquisition you can make. There's no better player to get. So the Lakers, were you got to give them an A+. So far in free agency for what they've done, getting LeBron, getting Rajon Rondo, um, and also not rushing into everything else, trying so hard to build a team around him that they are just signing anybody or giving up too much to get a player. Uh, and I think for that franchise, I think you got him for 4 years. Um, and for all intents and purposes, I mean, anybody else at this point would probably be out of theirs, but LeBron is still pretty much, though, the end of it in his prime, and you'll probably get 4 great years out of him. Uh, I think in the Western Conference standings and the playoff picture, I think it pushes them into the playoff picture. Um, and that's the thing because they finished outside. I think they were in the top 10.
35 wins last year. Yes, you're right.
35
In 10th
wins.
place.
And you know what LeBron does. I mean, LeBron is a 55 plus win superstar. That's what he does. That's how great he is. When he comes to your team, expect to win, 50 plus games. And I think they will. I think they'll push up to, 50, probably around 55 wins. And I think that'll put them, unfortunately, in the Western Conference, anywhere from, the third seed through maybe the fifth or sixth seed. Probably more around the fourth seed, though. They'll probably end up around that third or fourth spot. Um, unless Houston just crumbles, I just still see them with their pace and the way they play and the way they shoot. In the regular season, racking up a bunch of wins. Same thing with Golden State, and also, the Lakers aren't a finished product yet. I think 2019 is when you'll really see them put together the team to try and really compete with Golden State to get that championship.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Outside of maybe, I think 55 is a little high. I think I'd probably say 50 to 52. The only reason I say that is because the acquisitions that came after that, when it concerns JaVale McGee, Lance Stevenson, Rajon Rondo, and as far as re-signing Contavious Caldwell-Pope, those signings to me don't necessarily mean a big bump up because one, I think there's still enough. Like you said, it's still an unfinished product. I still think they've got some issues they need to address as far as rebounding, height, length, and shooting. Still, in order to try and compete on a top level in the Western Conference, but like you said, a couple games if you base off last season, a couple of games separated the teams 3 through 8. So all it takes is a little swing one way or the other for some of these teams to fall off or some of these teams that were behind them to come in. I see this as an opportunity for the Lakers to be as high as the 3rd seed as well. Or it could be like somewhere 6th, 7th. That wouldn't surprise me either, because it is a highly competitive Western Conference. There are a lot of teams, including yours, which have a viable including your team, the Clippers, that have a viable chance and opportunity to go ahead and be productive and have a chance to be in a playoff position in the Western Conference. The other, I guess, major decision that was made in regards to NBA free agency this year was done by Paul George. Paul George decided to forego his love that he had professed for the Lakers. Said in fact that, oh, well, you should have traded for me in the first place. Like the Lakers knew that at 100%. So be that as it may, he did re-sign and commit to a Oklahoma City team, which I'm happy for him. That's what he wants, no problem. What it gets into a point is, do you see Oklahoma City getting a bump up in this as far as an overall team improvement when you've actually, like Houston in the Houston Rockets, actually have made subtractions and are going to continue to do so with the departure of Carmelo Anthony and the fact that when you are the team that has the largest salary tax hit, which could be leading up to $300 million for a payroll tax if they don't get Carmelo off there. What are your thoughts on Oklahoma City being a competitive team in the Western Conference now that they have re-signed Paul George and leading into a competitor to the Houston Rockets as well? Your thoughts on them, because they've lost Luke Mabuamute to your team again. He returns to the Clippers, and then also Trevor Ariza to the Suns as well.
Well, first off with Oklahoma City, I like what I had a feeling Paul George. I had that feeling that he would return there. The thing about Paul George is Paul George has been in his entire time with the Indiana Pacers the lone superstar. His and Danny Granger's time really didn't cross when they were both, at the top of their game. So he was pretty much
Granger was already falling down as right. He was already degressing as a star.
With those injuries. Yeah, it was. And so Paul George had been the lone guy, and he played a super team with Wade and Bosh and LeBron. And you saw then what he can do. But this is the first time that he's played with another superstar where everything's not on his shoulders, and he can actually admire somebody else's game and playing with that person and his approach to the game. I actually think the Carmelo thing, them subtracting him from that roster is going to help them improve. I think they'll be better defensively overall. And they don't have to worry about a guy who we have to get the ball to in order to keep happy. So I think but I also think, and I've said this, I think Billy Donovan has to come up with some kind of an offensive system instead of just watching your superstars go one-on-one. But I think they are a contender in the West. I don't think that they can compete or challenge the top two in Golden State and Houston. But they'll be, again, around that 4th, third, fourth, fifth spot in the Western Conference. Houston, it's bad losing Ariza. I actually think they overpaid for Chris Paul. At this point in this stage in his career, 160 million is a lot for a 33-year-old point guard who's not super athletic. He's not the healthiest guy in the world. So you used a lot of your cap on keeping him around, and you lose, Bamute, and you lose Trevor Ariza, and now you're at a standstill, stagnant with Clint Capella, who's a huge part of their team. I think though defensively, so the Ariza and the Bamute thing hurts them defensively. It absolutely hurts them defensively. Offensively, I don't think it really hinders them too much. I think you put a guy, they just signed, I believe, James Ennis today. But you got a guy like Gerald Green, who, if you, in my opinion, you can slide him into that spot. He knocks down threes. He's athletic. He runs up and down the floor. He jumps out of the gym. Offensively, I don't think it really it hinders them too much. I think defensively, what you lose with Trevor Ariza and Bob Mute, that remains to be seen, and I think it will hurt them. But I still think offensively they have enough firepower where they'll be the second team in the West.
I agree with you on that, but when come playoff time, I believe they are going to regret not picking up those two contracts. In the case of Trevor Ariza, where Phoenix just outpriced everyone by a substantial margin, I can understand that. But Luke Mabuhamute, he at $4 million for signing with the Clippers, I think that's something that Houston could have handled. I guess they were worried about the injury concerns, but then again, you should be worried about that when you signed, like you said, Chris Paul to a 4-year, $160 million contract. Paying him anywhere close to $40 million when he reaches 38 or 39, I believe, at the end of the contract is just, it's insane. But wait, that's the beauty of the NBA free agency market. I guess if you want to commit to the short term with somebody, sometimes you got to commit to the long term as well. So if they wanted to keep Chris Paul for at least another year or two as a viable top shelf point guard, then I guess you got to pay for the other two that he might actually not be that at that level anymore. But we'll wait and see on that. Some of the other free agent signings that were out there were very interesting because it looks like everything is shifting towards the Western Conference. When you've got people re-signing, like everywhere from Yusuf Nurkic to the signings that were made in Utah to fortify their team as well. Tell me a team in the Western Conference, because we've talked about Oklahoma City, Houston, the Lakers, and of course, we will hear in a minute about Golden State, but we'll leave them here for a second because they did a very interesting signing. Is there any other team to be nervous or concerned about if you're the other teams in the Western Conference? Because I think there is at least one team that people are not looking at 100%, which can make a viable claim to being a top team or a top tier or a team in the top tier of the Western Conference.
I don't know. I think a team that catches fire that could be a bit scary, depending on who you are and where you meet them, maybe Denver. But outside of that, I'm Minnesota. I love their roster, but the murmurings and the gurglings and the behind the scenes stuff, and they not liking each other, they're not fitting well. Their offensive scheme, how slow they play, is just they don't fit. They should have been a lot better last year than what they are this year. Roster wise, I think they have one of the best rosters up and down their roster in the entire league outside of Golden State. But I don't have the faith in their system and their coaching to put them up there. So I would probably say Denver. The San Antonio usually is that team that you talk about, but I mean, with the Kawhi Leonard stuff, you don't know how long he's going to be on the roster, how much he'll play if he is still on the roster.
Tony Parker's left. Kyle
Tony
Anderson
Cross
has left.
gone. Yeah, so I think they're winding down to a place where it's time to start retooling or start all over. Um, but in the Western Conference, I mean, I still got Golden State, Houston at the top, um, Oklahoma City, and now I think the Lakers are going to push to that 3 or 4 or 5 spot.
I, I I agree with you somewhat on Denver because they re-signed Will Barton, excellent guard slash forward at 6'6". I think he can play a lot of positions right there. Yeah, as far as whatever set you're going to throw out, extremely gifted offensively, and obviously they signed their center as well. He has done a great job, a Jokic, to I think it was a 4 or 5 year contract as well that proves that he could become and that he was on the verge, on the cusp, but I believe he's going to be an all-star center at some point in time very soon. And with him and Jamal Murray can make a really nice 1-2 combo that can surprise a lot of people. But the team I was actually looking at and wanting to talk about was Utah, because I think Utah has done like another team in the Eastern Conference, has made a lot of under the radar moves which have solidified and fortified their team that could not only make a run for the top 3, not maybe the top 2, but for that third place and fourth place, as far as not only from a defensive standpoint, but they are really progressing on the offensive end as well. And another year removed for Donovan Mitchell from being a rookie, helping him become an even better player, and this time on the verge of becoming an all-star himself.
Mhm. I wanted to put New Orleans in there, but with the loss of Rondo, I'm not sure how that team is going to fare. Um,
I don't see the same kind of success in the postseason that they had this past year. Like you said, there's some tenuous injury issues of the past. You don't know how long Anthony Davis is going to stay healthy. That's always a question mark. Losing Rondo, who played so well in the playoffs for them, playoff Rondo, that you're concerned as far as where that's going to go. And they have some roster issues as far as depth wise that I still have some concerns about. But I think Utah is that team, I think, that's on the verge of becoming a really, really competitive team, a top 4 team in the Western Conference. I think that they've made these solid under the radar moves, re-signing Derek Favors and re-signing Derek Favors, Dante Exum, and solidifying their unit as far as becoming more and more adept to being able to make a defensive run here, maybe even going to a second and even possibly even a more as far as a playoff run is concerned. When it comes to the Eastern Conference, however, and it's not that we're all treating it like an afterthought, mind you. There's a lot of great teams that are still in the Eastern Conference, but I think it all starts with Philadelphia and Boston. Now, both teams haven't been really super active on the market. I know in a trade, Philadelphia, which tried so hard to get LeBron James and Paul George, among others, they were successful in trading with Denver for Wilton Chandler, and that's going to help a little bit. But there's still, I think, a little ways to go in fortifying that roster because there was some depth issues that have been lost when you lose Ilyasova and also Bellinelli, who were there, did a great job, and now have left to greener pastures.
yeah, the Eastern Conference, I think it boils down to actually, I still have Toronto in there. I'm a little worried without Dwayne Casey. What they'll be. I know a lot of people write them off because every time they play Cleveland, it's a debacle. But it's to me that's one of those things. It's not a we can't reach this level thing. It's a that guy is a bad man and we can't do anything to stop him thing. And now that he's out of the conference, there's no more LeBron in their way. I think they'll be up there with those other two. Again with Boston and Philadelphia. Um, and I don't know who to pick out of those two. Boston has the coaching edge. I wouldn't even say I would give them the talent edge. I think they're comparable. Um, but to me, it boils down to how much did Philadelphia learn from last year, the meltdowns in the fourth quarter, those kind of things. Another year playing together. Are their superstars going to be healthy? Are their role players going to get a little bit better? Um, who else do they pick up in free agency? I mean, we're talking about free agency, but free agency is, it's fairly early. And there's still some, little guy pieces here and there that could really help teams. But so right now, I would have to make Boston the favorite, um, with Philadelphia and then Toronto would be my top three in the Eastern Conference.
One team I think you should look out for as well, and they've done a lot of fortifying in their depth in this offseason with free agency, is Indiana and the Indiana Pacers. I think they've done a really nice job fortifying their bench. They did pay a little bit overboard on Doug McDermott, on Doug McDermott, Dougie McBuckets, I guess they call him. And they did sign Tyreek Evans, who, if he is healthy and stays healthy, is going to be a really nice addition. And also Kylo Quinn as a backup center. I think those type of moves, which don't break your cap, but still provides a very, very solid roster. And they did one thing a lot of other teams are not trying to do. They actually tied up a little bit of their salary cap with 2-year deals, 2 and 3 year deals in some cases, because while other teams are all banking on the 2019 season, there are just a handful of teams like Indiana which are trying to solidify their teams for the future going forward at this point in time. So most of the teams, like the Clippers, for instance, are gearing up for next year and the year after with a whole ton of cap space. There are other teams like Indiana which are actually taking advantage of that by tying down some of these solidifying parts of their roster for the next 2 to 3 years, so that at least they'll be on a competitive nature. And I think they, like Boston, like Philadelphia, like Toronto, and maybe even to an extent Miami and a couple others, see the fact that, hey, LeBron James is no longer in the Eastern Conference, so now's our time to act. And who knows, there's an injury to whoever comes out of the West at a key moment in time, we can have a better shot at winning an NBA championship.
Right. I'm a little worried on the Tyreek Evans thing. I like him as a player, but my problem with him on that team is kind of like the Oklahoma City thing last year, or not this past season, but the season before with Victor Oladipo. When you take the ball out of Victor Oladipo's hands, it marginalizes him as a player. And Tyreek Evans is a guy who plays with the ball in his hands. He shot a lot better from three this season, but I don't know if he can be a spot up guy or a cut guy. If he can play off the ball successfully, then I think it'll work. But if he has to have the ball in his hand, I think it can cause some friction on the court.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that, because that is his game, to be a dominant person with the ball. And if you have him coming off the bench running your offense, I think that's more suited for him, 20 to 25 minutes a game on that. I could see that as a nice slot for him.
Yeah, if they stagger the minutes correctly, then I think it can work as well. If he isn't as successful playing off the ball, but I think you would have to substantially cut his minutes down to where he's not a 35, 32, 33 minute game player. He's more in the 24 minutes in that range. Then I think it can work. I'm always weary of the Washington Wizards just because they're the Washington Wizards. But I like what they did. I like the Dwight Howard pickup. I really like the Austin Rivers pickup because I think it finally gives them a legitimate backup at both guard spots, because he can play the point and he can play the two. He's actually a very underrated shooter everywhere except for on the free throw line. But he's a good defensive player on the wing as well. And I think there'll be times where they can play all three of them together, move and build to the three. So we'll see how that works. But I like their acquisitions more than I am optimistic about their runs.
Exactly, because every time you put a lot of stake into them, like I did last year, you get burned.
Yeah,
And you and I have both seen that. When there's low expectations for them, they seem to exceed it and exceed it handily. But when you put expectations on them, they seem to wither under that pressure. So I agree with you on that. Their big run was like a couple years ago when they weren't that well thought of. And look, when once people started, putting money on them or putting a lot of weight behind them, they started to not being able to live up to those expectations. So I can't agree with you. I can't agree with you more on that. Dwight Howard, I think, is a solid pickup, even though it is Dwight Howard. And it was funny because you hear all the things that Dwight wanted to go to Golden State. And unfortunately, nobody on Golden State wanted Dwight Howard. So you've got a reputation, you've earned it. And unfortunately, it took him to Washington. But hey,
yeah,
it's still a good move for them. And it looks like they will at least have a solid team. I'm not putting them as high right now. I'm not going to get burned twice. Like I said, my expectations are going to be a little bit lower when I put out my season rankings coming up here in a couple months. But I could they exceed it? Yeah, they can exceed it because anytime you have John Wall, you have also as well Bradley Beal and Otto Porter Jr. You never know what you're going to get. You're going to get feast or famine with that trio, that's for sure. But speaking of Golden State, I thought we'd close out our conversation. Well, I thought we'd sort of turn to our conversation towards them and leave them in their own special place because the whole league is up in arms because Golden State did it once again. They were able to sign, well, someone that they didn't think they were going to be able to sign at least this point in time last year. That's for sure. Uh, DeMarcus Boogie Cousins is actually going to head over to the Golden State area. He is signed with the Warriors. It's a 1 year, I think a 5.5 million type deal.
yeah,
He is going to be able to rehabilitate his torn Achilles tendon and hopefully be there for the second half. And if he's anywhere close to being the Boogie that both you and I know, that could be a really deadly combination, and that could mean a lot of trouble for anyone else trying to compete with them this year in the NBA.
yeah. That move. I know, like you said, everybody's up in arms. To me, it's more of a Boogie Cousins move and less of a Golden State move. Like to me, it wasn't something great that Golden State figured out how to do. It was one of those things where Boogie Cousins says, and in my opinion, this is his line of thinking. He's not going to be ready the first half of the season. He's probably only going to play maybe 30 games. And in most of those games, he won't be fully, DeMarcus Cousins. It's probably going to take him more than a year to come back at his size from an Achilles tear. So what happens with the move that he's doing is it takes the pressure off of him. Unless he comes back and completely destroys something like it completely destroys that locker room or just completely throws off what they do, which I doubt he will. He's going to be successful. So he'll have a year where there's no pressure on him. He can rehab. He can finally go to the playoffs, which he's never been. He'll probably end up with a ring. And then he can go do what a lot of other people have done, which is spend the rest of his career getting money. The rest of his career, getting big contracts, putting up big stats, and you've solidified yourself now. Like, I have my ring, I've had postseason success. Now let me go do the other stuff. But it's gonna be, for the most part, a miserable year for him trying to rehab. So I think it's like, why be on a miserable team? Why I'm in this miserable state of trying to rehab and get back together and not being able to be on the court. At least I know that my team will be successful, and when I get back, I can contribute and we can win a championship. But I think it's a 1 year deal. It's a 1 year trial. I think there's no way he's back there next year. I think they go. They're my pick to win the NBA championship this year, so I think he'll get a ring. And then he'll go through training camp and everything next year in a summer where he's close to being healthy, and next year somebody will give him a contract. And that's another thing. If he proves that he can be on a team, in a locker room and be in part of a cohesive unit without doing any kind of fracturing or attitude that's detrimental to a team, then I think that helps recuperate him as far as somebody willing to take a chance or deciding that they can still use him as a foundational piece for their team.
Those are some great thoughts. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I would be remiss if I didn't say I agree with you as well on the fact that this makes Golden State the substantial early favorite, just in the fact that, if you get anywhere near the type of problems that you had in this past playoffs, you can always throw out the DeMarcus Cousins factor and throw him out there, who should be somewhat healthy by that time. Not obviously at a full 100%, but at least to some level that he's going to be very effective. And, even even if he's anywhere close to the all-star that he was before the injury, it's just a sign that, well, hey, the richer get richer. But hey, it's not unfair. They have really navigated through the system and done everything that you needed to do as a franchise correctly. And like you said, DeMarcus Cousins approached them primarily instead of the other way around, because he wasn't getting the deals that he was hoping for. And I think a lot of the teams just can't afford to be able to have him be on the sidelines for over half a year and pay him that kind of money that he wants and be able to justify it to their fan base. Only the Golden State Warriors seem to have that type of luxury. So
right, and again, they're only paying him $5.3 million. I mean, I think he's making $100,000 less than Nick Young made last year. So there's so many players who make that and can't even get on the court. So I don't think they'll have any problem selling that to anybody. It's just a smart move. I mean, it was one of those moves where it basically fell in their lap, and their players have done a great job of being taking less money to win, and so I mean that's opened up space for them to get certain players here, certain players there, certain players here, certain players there, and the opportunity presented itself again, and they got the best offensive center in basketball.
That they did. You're right on that one. Well, I'm gonna close it out on this, my friend. I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I want to know, NBA free agency is coming to a close, like I said earlier. I want to hear your thoughts on what you think is the best free agent signing, and of course, what is the worst free agent signing this past offseason. There's no Moskov deal. There's no Deng deal, I guess, that you can really pin down as saying, oh my God, that's just awful.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, what are your thoughts on what could be the best NBA offseason signing, and obviously the worst as well?
Well, I mean, the best signing is LeBron. I mean, there's no getting better than that. It completely changes what the Lakers franchise was. I thought they were 2 years away. Because I believe you said they won 35 games last year. I believe the worst seed was 47 wins this year. So I thought they were 2 years away. This, in my opinion, catapults them into the playoffs. And it puts you on a path for other free agents to come in and to be even better the year after. So I think LeBron signing with the Lakers is by far the best signing. I haven't given much thought to the worst signing. I might have to go with the Chris Paul deal. I just think that's too much money to give somebody that played. I mean, I think he played 51 games last year. He's been hurt consistently for the better part of the last 5 years. And he's never been an overly athletic player. And for his size, for him to be, he's a 6'1" point guard, 6'2" point guard, but he's not very athletic. His whole game is about, deception and change of pace. But you're roughly going to get 60 games out of him, and you're giving him that much money, 160 million over 4 years. And that might be okay through the first 2 years, but when you get on the back end of that 4 year deal, and you have your star James Harden, you're still trying to compete while he's still in his prime, and you got a guy who's probably at that point out of his prime, destroying your cap. Uh, that to me is probably the worst signing. Not him as a player, but the amount of money that they decided to give him.
I agree with you as a caveat as well, being that the last 2 years, I think Houston's really going to just it's kind of like, oh, it's just going to sit there, especially if he does get injured repeatedly, especially at an older age. You wonder how effective he can be at that age, because I don't think, like you, he's going to be able to age as gracefully as LeBron James has.
Right.
But we'll see on that. But yeah, the latter 2 years of this contract might be really something that's going to be hard to swallow for Houston at this end. Yeah, just like I said, it's something that really they have to be aware of, and they wouldn't have done it without. And they wouldn't have signed him without knowing that full well. So their window to win a championship is the next 2 years, in my opinion, and they fully realize that. And if they don't get that after the 2 years, it's going to be looking pretty tough, I think, once his skills start to deteriorate, which could happen sooner, could happen later. But I agree with you. That is one of the worst out there. My worst is going to be Zach LaVine getting re-signed by Chicago after they matched an offer sheet with your friend and mine, the Sacramento Kings, for 4 years, almost $80 million, to a player that's already suffered a torn ACL. He's just back from it, who really doesn't play point, and he's not a great shooter for the shooting guard. He's still somewhat athletic, but I don't know if he's the starting shooting guard that you want long-term for your team. What are your thoughts on that?
I know a lot of people were turned off by that. I thought it was a great move by Sacramento to sign him to that offer sheet. To me, they have a bunch of young talent right now who they don't have to pay. But what they do is struggle scoring. They struggle defensively too. I mean, they have struggles, but when you get a guy and you think, okay, he could come back. I mean, he's been a 20-point a game scorer. He's still relatively young. He's athletic, so you expect, okay, last year he was marred by that torn ACL. He should be, more or less 100% now from that. If I was Chicago, I probably wouldn't have matched it. But I don't see them pushing for the playoffs at this point either. They don't have a bunch of heavy loads on their team. To me, it's one of those moves where on paper it doesn't look great when you look at if you don't have him in high esteem, but when you look at who the teams are and what they have currently on their roster, it's not as bad of a move as it would be if you were more in contention. To me, they're two bottom of the standings rosters. So you don't have a bunch of guys who you're just free agent destination, and now you can't sign players here, you can't sign players there. I don't even see maybe another player on their roster who you would give more than $15 million a year to as a re-signing on Chicago's end. Now, Sacramento, who signed him to the offer sheet, I think they have guys, who in the future they're going to have to re-sign. Fox, I can't think of his first name. I want to say DeAndre, but I know that's not it.
De'Aaron
Fox. They signed Marvin Bagley. So I think they have the makings of a really good team going forward. I think that was just a shot to get somebody who I think they believe is somewhat proven. But like you said, money wise, it looks bad. But I think with what they have with their rosters, it's not as bad as it seems.
And last but not least, I think that you're right. I have to agree with you. LeBron James is probably the best signing NBA free agency wise over this past summer. not because of what it does now, but what it does for the LA Lakers going forward. Now making them once again a destination for players to go. They still will have cap space down the road, not as much as some other teams like the Clippers, which may has, like I said earlier, as much as $70 million under the salary cap starting next year. So they could probably sign 2 elite players at that point in time. So things are really going to be looking good for you, my friend, this time next year. But it will allow the Lakers to be a premier destination. They could literally, like I said, sign one more star player or get Kawhi in a trade. And then once the Deng contract comes off in a year, or if they want to just go ahead and wave it off, but hopefully if they let it go the 2 years, they'll really, by 2020, have a additional amount of funds that they could go ahead and sign a third elite player as well. So definitely some good things for the Los Angeles Lakers, only because they have signed LeBron James, and a lot of the other players that they signed are on 1-year terms. And by doing so, they can clear out the house and see, okay, hey, this didn't work. We're going to go ahead and sign more players that maybe have a different need or fill a different role, and be able to go ahead and wipe the slate clean and try it again with LeBron year after year after year for at least 4 years, for at least the next 4 years. So that's a good sign. I agree with you that LeBron James was probably the best NBA free agency acquisition this year. So looks like it's going to be a great summer, my friend, and leading into another great NBA season. Any last thoughts on NBA free agency before we head on out?
Yeah, I would like to ding my Clippers for not getting rid of DeAndre when they had the opportunity to get something for him, and they lose him for nothing.
And same with Julius Randle.
Yeah, same with Julius Randle. When you have a guy and it doesn't look like they're going to resign, and your inklings are they're not going to resign, this is why you trade them. This is why I believe the Spurs have to trade Kawhi Leonard. You can try to hold on to him. It's one thing when you do Oklahoma City and you trade for a player, that might not return. But when you have that asset and you don't do anything with it, you look pretty foolish when that happens.
Yes, you do. But hey, these teams don't learn from these continual mistakes that they're making, with Paul George, like I said, with Julius Randle, and like you said, with DeAndre Jordan, who I think signed for pretty much the same amount that he gave up in, I think, the 24 million or something like that. So, yeah, it's I guess it's just these teams are unwilling to pull the trigger until it's too late, and then there's buyer's remorse, seller's remorse on if they got enough, or if they were going to get enough. But yeah, if the Spurs are really sure that Kawhi is going to leave, and Kawhi has made all indications at this point in time that he is going to be leaving as a free agent, you might as well, hey, you don't have to trade him to the Lakers, but you at least should trade him somewhere and get some type of assets coming back, and don't make the mistake that both the Lakers and also as well the Clippers have done, and some other teams as well. So yeah. All right, my friend. Well, it's like I said, it's been a great NBA summer so far. Cannot wait to see how this all pans. Cannot wait to see how this all pans out this coming NBA season. Anthony, you and I are going to probably get back again right before the season to talk more about it as the NBA season comes up. I know the exhibition season will be coming up, training camp, all that. Just so excited for my friend, and excited for the chance to get to talk to you about it as well.
Absolutely. It's going to be a very interesting time. Everything would have shaken out by then, so we'll see how all the rosters stack up. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well. And just, again, appreciate all the time that you take in talking to me about the NBA. Once again, it is our man in the know when it comes to the NBA. It is Anthony Barbarin. If you have an NBA question for us here at Pop Culture Cosmos or Inside Sports, feel free to send us a message. Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, Inside Sports on Facebook, or Pop Culture Cosmos popculturecosmo@yahoo.com, or even Pop Culture Cosmo on Twitter as well. Myself or Anthony will be glad to answer it for you, and we truly appreciate any feedback that you give us on the show. So we truly appreciate it, my friend. Glad to have you a part of the program as always, and of course, a part of the Pop Culture Cosmos and right here at Inside Sports.